What's going on, guys? Welcome back to the channel. Stefan here from App Stuff, and I am super excited to be continuing our partnership with Supabase to bring you guys this full-scale iOS application built with Supabase as the backend. So as you can see, it's going to look just like Twitter. We're going to be building this out in a 4 to 5 part series. This is part 2 of that series, and we're going to do a demo of the application here in just a second. But if you're just joining us now, part 1 of the series, we covered Supabase authentication. So the app here in light mode is the current state of the application, and the app in dark mode here is the completed application of what we will build by the end of this series. So where we're at right now, we have a very basic login and sign up flow. I can show you guys where we left off in the current state of the application. Let me log in. This is all we got so far. We can authenticate users and sign in and sign out. The completed version of the application obviously has this full user feed, the ability to upload new posts, and we also have a more advanced user profile where we can upload profile images for each one of our users. That is all going to use the Supabase storage APIs. And for storing information like the user's username and posts and all of that stuff, we're going to be using the Supabase database API. So this is a full-scale iOS application we're going to be building out in this series, guys. And we are going to be picking up right where we left off after the first video where we covered authentication. So if you guys haven't taken that yet, the link is in the description, and that is live on the YouTube channel. And if you guys want the completed source code for this project, the link for that is in the description as well, if you don't want to have to code along with everything and save yourself some time. So you don't just get access to the source code for this tutorial, you're going to get access to all of our YouTube projects here. So there's a ton of stuff, and you guys will get lifetime access for a one-time purchase of $59. So that means all YouTube tutorials that we do in the future, you'll get access to the source code for that stuff as well. So there is a ton of really, really valuable content here that you guys get for just $59. And the price will increase as I add more content. So make sure you check that out now if you want the source code for everything we do here on YouTube, especially this awesome Supabase project, for a one-time fee. And the link for that is in the description as well, guys. So let's go ahead and get started with where we are going to be picking up in this video and what we're going to be doing and what we'll accomplish by the end of it. So in this video, guys, we're going to be setting up our database, and we're going to be going over how to upload and download data from our database. So basically, after we sign a user up, we're going to go ahead and add some stuff like a username to our user object, and we're going to upload that information to the database and go through all the setup for that, and then ultimately fetch and download that information from the database. Right now, we only have authentication support set up. So that doesn't support things like adding a username or any other user metadata we might want to add in our app, like a profile image URL or the user's age. Right now, we're just displaying the user's email, but that was done through the authentication API, as we can see here. We haven't actually uploaded any information to the database, so that's what we're going to be doing in this video. So let's go ahead and jump right into Xcode and get started with what we need to do there. And then we are going to come back into Supabase and get all that stuff set up and ultimately be able to fetch or upload and download information about our user to our database. So with Xcode opened up, guys, this is what our project should currently look like. I want us to hop into this models folder, and we're going to take a look at our user object, and we're going to add some data to this object or some properties to this user object. So the first thing we're going to add is a username, and this is just going to be a string. Then we're going to add a property called created at, which is going to be a date, which will indicate when the user account was created. And then we are going to add a profile image URL, which is going to be an optional string, and we're going to set it equal to nil. The reason this is going to be optional is we are going to allow the user to sign up without adding a profile image URL. And then once they get to their profile, they'll have the ability to tap on this image and choose a profile image they want to upload. If they haven't uploaded an image, we'll just display a placeholder or default image. So this is what our user object is currently going to look like. Let's go ahead and hit Command B to build our code. We are going to get some errors here, and there's going to be some simple refactors that we need to make. So we need to hop into our Supabase auth service. And as you guys can see here, we are returning a user from this sign up and sign in function. So we're actually going to change this to just return a string, and that will just represent the user's ID. And we'll use that as in place of returning this entire user object, because right now, if we try to return the, complete user data from like a sign-in function, we don't have all of that information here. We get their email because we were getting it through the auth API, but now we have expanded our user object to include more data, and we don't have all that data at the time of signing in. So really quickly, guys, let's just go ahead and say here, we're going to return a string and return a string in the sign up and sign in functions. And we no longer need to return a full user object. We can just say return response dot user dot, then we're going to say ID, and we're going to say .uuid string. So you guys will see now that we don't even need this email anymore. And honestly, I think that's for the best, because right now our sign up and sign in functions are very tightly coupled to the user signing up through the email password API. So if you wanted to add other auth methods like OAuth methods like Google or Apple or Facebook, the email might not be available, or phone number is where it wouldn't be available. Sorry. So you definitely don't want to couple this so tightly to the user having an email added in order for the sign up function to work. So we're going to delete that from the sign in function as well. We can keep these print statements there just to indicate to us that we're getting a response back from the sign in functions and sign up functions. But here, guys, we can just return the same thing. And we're going to say return response.user.id.uuid string. Okay. And here for this get current user, we are going to replace this or refactor this to say get current user session. And this is going to simply return an optional string. And here, guys, we are going to say that we just want to return response.user.id.uuid string. Or sorry, Supabase user, my bad. So that should be it for our auth service refactor. So this is probably going to cause some issues in our auth manager, because now we have a different return type here, but that's going to be it for our Supabase auth service. And once again, the reason we did that here, guys, is because we have expanded our user object to include more data. So now we don't want to couple these functions to that user object, because that could get infinitely more complex, right? You could have all kinds of user metadata associated with a user in your application. So now our API is much more lightweight. All it returns is like a user ID. So let's see, back in our auth manager, we were using this auth manager to populate this current user property. So instead of having it as a user like object, guys, we're just going to say we want to use it as a current user ID. And now this will also just be a string. We're going to build out an entirely separate component in order to handle fetching our user stuff from the database. We want the auth stuff to be responsible for authentication only. And then we're going to build out a user service that's going to be in charge of fetching our information from the database to ultimately map into that user data object. So here we're going to say self.currentUserID is now equal to that. And here ID is equal to that. And here we'll say self.currentUserID equals authService.getCurrentUserSession. And here we say current user ID is equal to nil. And ID is equal to nil. Okay, so that's a pretty simple refactor for our auth manager. Let's go ahead and try to build again with Command B. And we see in our content view that now we have another error. So here, guys, we just need to say if let current user ID is equal to authManager.currentUserID. Then we know we have someone that is logged in, and we will display our main interface. Whereas if we don't, we simply display our login view. So let's see. Here we could actually just go ahead and let's just replace it with current user ID for now. We're going to build out an entirely separate screen for this, so this doesn't really matter. Let's just go ahead and now run our code to see if our refactor here was successful. So I'm going to bring up the current version of our application. Once again, guys, the completed version of the app is in dark mode. The current version of our application is in light mode. So we can see here that our app still functions as expected, right? We were logged in before, we reran the app and we're still logged in. I can go ahead and sign out and it takes me back to my sign out or login page. So all of our functionality is still working beautifully. Let's go ahead and run the app again and see if it keeps us signed out. So I'm going to open up the simulator again. So that should open up to the login page. Beautiful. I'm going to go ahead and log back in just to make sure my login functionality still works. Log in. And you guys will see that it beautifully takes me over to the main or authenticated interface of my application. So our refactor is successful. Now let's go ahead and build out our user profile screen and just get the UI of that knocked out. That's going to be really, really simple. We're also going to build out a basic tab view. And yes, in case you guys haven't noticed, this is using the new iOS 26 liquid glass designs. I'm currently running the Xcode beta, and that's why you guys' stuff might look a little different here, but this stuff is super cool. If you guys want to check out more about what all the updates from WWDC 25, I have a video for that on the channel as well. Link is in the description. But anyway, let's go ahead and get started with building out our profile UI, guys. So in our core folder, we're going to make a new folder, and this is going to be for our user profile. And here we're going to create a new file. It's going to be a Swift UI view, and this is simply going to be called user profile view. So this is a pretty basic view. We are just going to wrap this up in a navigation stack to start things off. And it's going to be a list, guys. We're going to take advantage of the built-in list UI stuff where it sort of creates these sections for us. And we're going to create two of those sections. So we're going to say we want a section and another section. So I'll add some comments here so we know what this is. This is going to be our header. And this is going to be our sign out button. So for the sign out, we are going to need access to our auth manager, right? So we're going to go here and add our auth manager as an environment object, or sorry, environment. I get so used to using the old school environment objects. So this is auth manager.self. We're going to say private var auth manager. And here we are simply going to say we want a button, sign out, task, await, auth manager.sign out. So there's our sign out functionality. And we are going to give this a foreground style of .red. And here we could just say text profile header for now. And let's go and hop back into our root folder. And here, guys, we are going to replace this with our user profile view. So this has already become a lot cleaner, and we can see the power of having the auth manager set up as an environment object, because we can use this across multiple surfaces in our application and do anything that is auth related, right? So in our content view, we need to use it to check to see if the user's logged in and route them to the correct user interface. In our profile view, we simply need the sign out function. And the beauty of this is when we call auth manager.signout, it will automatically wipe that user ID property out to nil. So let's go ahead and see what that sign out function does. Just command click into sign out, guys, and it'll sign us out with our auth service, but it'll also set this current user ID property to nil. And when that happens, that will trigger an update in our content view because we are listening to changes on that current user ID property. It will redraw this group and route us back to the login view because now it will recognize the updated state of that current user ID property, which is being observed through the observable macro. So all in all, just super clean architecture here, and we're looking really good. And next up, the sort of last thing I want us to do that's UI related, that before we segue into our Supabase setup with our database and all that, we're going to sign out here in the completed app, and we're going to go to sign up. We'll see we're going to have an extra field for a username here. So we are going to go ahead and add that to our sign up view. It's going to be super simple. So just go to, let's see, our view folder in the auth guy, go to registration view. We're going to create a state private var for our username, and it's going to be a blank string. And then we are going to go here and just copy this text field and paste it right below that. And we're going to say enter your username, and we're going to change our text component to username. And that should be all we got to do. So next up, guys, I think that's it for our UI stuff. Now, when we call sign up, we are going to want to pass that username along in this field so that we can ultimately upload that information to our database. So let's command click into this sign up function and see what we need to modify in order to get this done. So we're simply just going to add a username field here, which is going to be a string. And then we're going to modify our auth service function as well, where we need to add this input param as well. So really quickly, before we do that, I can just go ahead and say username, even though we haven't added it yet. We'll command click into the sign up function that is in our auth service and add that as an input param as well. And we are not going to do anything with the username in the actual like auth sign up function. We're going to introduce separate functionality here to upload this username to our database and all of this other user information as well. So really quickly, let's just go ahead and run our app, guys, and see what it's looking like now with our updated UI for both the profile screen and the new sign up screen. So yep, so we have an error back in our registration view. We just need to simply pass along this username here. So do that and run your code. And next up, we should be able to see our UI updates. So this should take us directly to the profile view. And we'll get our tab view all set up later. But yeah, this is our profile header, our sign out button. And if I hit that sign out button, it signs me out. That's still working beautifully. Go hit sign up, and we see that our extra username field is there. So that's everything we need to do for our UI for now. And we have our auth service completely updated as well. So this is looking really good. Now we are ready to move into Supabase and get our database set up so that we can upload information to that database. So with Supabase opened up, guys, here's the documentation. This is how we are eventually going to write the code to upload our user data to the database. But first, there is some setup that we need to do to make sure that we actually can upload that information to the database. We have to set everything up. So in your Supabase app, go to this left menu here and go to database. And we see that we don't have any tables created yet. So we are actually going to need to create a new table in the database. So for those of you that are used to using Firebase, this is a little bit different, where if we want to do something like upload a user or a post, we have to set a table up for that in the back end. I think there might be a way to do it programmatically, but we're just going to do it from the Supabase interface here. So we're going to call this table users. We don't really need a description. And we are going to check enabling row level security. So I'll talk about what this RLS or row level security is. And we can see here that it essentially requires policies to query your data. So it adds rules and logic behind who can perform what sort of database operations on specific tables. But we'll cover this more once we get those set up. What I want us to do now is jump to this column section here, where we will create or model our user object after what we did with our user struct in Xcode. So guys, we have this ID property, but it is not an integer. So we're going to need to change this type to start things off. So go ahead and just hit this drop down menu. And we're going to say that this is going to be a UUID, or universally unique identifier, and make sure that primary is checked here. This is going to be the primary key for our user object. And I'll explain more about what a primary key is and sort of what that enables with this style of like Postgres database. So here we also have this created at field, but we need to match the spelling that we have in our code, unless you want to add custom decoding, which I don't feel like doing. So we are just going to mark this as created at, but essentially guys, sometimes databases will have this underscore to separate words, but we're going to use camel casing here. And then we need to add a column to get the rest of our fields in here. We have a username property, and this is going to be a text component. So let's see, text right here. We can just default it to null. We can add another column for our email. This will also just be text. And I believe that's it. Let me see, ID created at. Let's open up Xcode really quickly to make sure our object looks the same. So if we go here and go to our user, ID, email, username, profile image URL. Okay, so let's copy this key and say add column, profile image URL. That is simply going to be a text component as well. And then we're going to hit save. So it's creating our database table for us. And essentially, this is what we need to do before we can actually upload information to this table. If we had tried to simply upload information from our app to the Supabase database without setting up this table, it wouldn't work. It would throw an error. And that's different from Firebase in that with Firebase, you can simply just say, hey, .collection users .set data, and you don't have to do any sort of table setup. And one thing that I really like about Supabase with these table setups is it has schema validation. So if you upload information that doesn't match this schema, it simply won't save that information to the database. So that avoids problems with like data formatting. And I don't think Firebase has that. So just to show you guys really quickly what this is going to look like in the completed app, or when we actually upload users, this is what we have here. It has our users. I only have 2 in the completed application, but we have the ID fields, username, email, profile image URL, and created at here. So we have this table structure for our database, which is pretty cool. So next up, guys, we're going to go ahead and add this RLS policy. So click that button, and we're going to go to this create policy option here. And as I stated before, this gives us the ability to add rules to our database operations, or logic to our database operations, to say, hey, only people that meet these requirements can perform these operations. So we're going to say that we want select, and we'll see here that it generates some code for us. And basically, this is what this code translates to. It said this policy gives read access to your table for all users via the select operation. So if we want users to be able to read information about other users, like we have in our user feed or something like that, we definitely need to set this up. So I'm going to say, I want to save that policy. Okay. And then we're going to create another policy, and we're going to say that we want to enable insert for authenticated users only. So we basically want to make sure that before a user uploads information to the database, that they're authenticated. We don't want non-authenticated users uploading information to the database because that could get really messy. So we are going to say insert, and we'll see that the code is generated for that rule, and we're going to say save policy. And one more, guys, we're going to do update as well. So basically, this is going to say that this assumes that your table has a column like email and allows users to update rows which the email column matches their email. Which basically means, guys, that we're only going to allow the currently logged in user to update their information. We don't want user A being able to update the user B's table, right? Because then certain users could mess with other users' data, and that's essentially not good. So we're going to select this update guy as well. And basically it just checks the user's email and makes sure that the person trying to update that table, it does this little email check between their authenticated email and the email in the database field to make sure that those match before it allows that update operation. So we're going to hit save policy there as well. And that should be it for our database setup. We have our rules all ready to go. And now we're ready to hop back into Xcode to get started with our implementation of actually uploading this information to our database. So let's go ahead and get Xcode opened up. And we're going to be going into our auth service, guys. So let's go auth service. And we're going to add another function here. And this is going to be a private function to upload our user data. And we're going to say with UID, which is a string, email, string, username. string. And we're going to make this async throws. So uploading information to Supabase is really, really easy. We're just going to create our user object. We're going to say let user equal a user object. And here we're going to pass in our UID, our email, our username. And for created at, we're just going to use a date object. And then we're simply going to say try await. And we're going to use the client, and the autocomplete gets me set up automatically here, which is awesome. And then we actually need to say .insert user, and then we need to say .execute. So this is all we need to do to execute an insert operation for Supabase here, guys. But we're getting an error here, and we need to make sure that user conforms to the codable protocol. So let's go ahead and go into our user object and make sure that this conforms to codable as well. And something that I really like about Supabase is, unlike Firebase, it just automatically encodes this user for us. With Firebase, we had to encode it manually ourselves every time we want to upload some sort of information and then pass that data, which is like a Firestore dictionary or something. And it just, it's more boilerplate code and more hassle. I really like that Supabase just does this automatically for us under the hood. So that's literally all we got to do. Now we just need to figure out where to call this function. So we're going to do so after we sign up. So really quickly, guys, in this sign up function, we're going to say try await upload user data. And we need to pass in this UID. So let's actually store that in a property. I'm going to grab this and copy it and say let UID equal that. And we'll say here UID, email, and username. And here we can just return our UID. So essentially, guys, when we sign a user up, we're going to sign them up on our back end. And then we are going to upload their information to our database. And after that is done, we are going to return that user ID, and our authentication will, or our app will route the user to the authenticated interface or the main interface. So that's all we got to do. Now we just need to test this out and see if it works. So let's go ahead and run the application. And guys, I actually want to turn off the email verification feature in Supabase for testing purposes. So if we go back to our authentication guy. So yeah, here, authentication. And let's go to our sign-in/providers and go ahead and click on email. And guys, just go ahead and toggle confirm email off. That makes it so that we can use like test or mock emails and we don't have to confirm our email to sign up. And make sure you hit save. And oh, cool, there's our minimum password length as well. But I'm going to bring up the simulator and we are going to sign a user up. So I'm just going to say like test@gmail.com. Username is test, and enter a password and hit sign up. And check that out. Our auth flow is still working. That's amazing. Now let's go back to Xcode and just make sure we didn't get any errors. So it looks like we don't get any errors, which is really, really cool. And now the moment of truth is going to our database section. And you guys should see in the schema visualizer, we have our users table. If you just click this arrow here at the top, it'll take us over there. And check that out, guys. This is absolutely incredible. We have successfully uploaded our information to the database and we've saved our first user in our database. So round of applause, man. Give yourselves a pat on the back. That was a lot of setup and a lot of work, but we got it done. And I'm super pumped on that. So next up, to finish this video, all we need to do is go over how to fetch this information from the database and ultimately display that in our application. So let's go ahead and get started with that. So let's open up Xcode. And if you guys remember earlier, I talked about us setting up a separate component to fetch our user information. So we're going to create a separate user service to do that. And the reason behind that is we just want a separate component that is in charge of fetching our user database stuff. This is all auth stuff. I'm okay with having this upload user data function here because that just happens right after sign up. It's part of our sign up process. But for everything else, like actually fetching that information and storing our current user object in a property in a component, we're going to set that up in a different component. So let's see guys, in my models folder, we're going to change the structure up a little bit. In my core folder, I'm going to create a folder called features, and I'm going to stick auth there and user profiles there. So now we have a features folder, and that sort of just separates all the features of our application. And now in this core folder, I'm going to create an entirely separate folder for our users, because we're going to expand this to have like a user service, a user manager, a user model, and it would get kind of messy if we just stuck all that in a models folder. So I'm super big on folder structure, guys. So let's go ahead and create a model folder within our user folder and stick our user model there. And then we are going to create a service folder. And this is going to be our user service. So I'm going to create a Swift file and call this user service. And then I'm going to create a user manager. So we're going to create another folder for our manager, and this is going to be called user manager. So we're following the exact same architecture we did with our auth feature. So we had an auth service that gets injected to our auth manager via dependency injection, and the auth manager simply implements that service. So we have a very, very clear separation of concerns here. And this is how I like to structure my code, guys. This is how the pros do it, if they know what they're doing. So let's go ahead and build out this user service. So this is going to be pretty basic. We're just going to create a structure called user service, and we are going to initialize our Supabase client exactly as we did in our auth service. So I'm going to go to that file really quickly, and we're going to use this exact same code, guys. So here's our Supabase client, and we need to import Supabase up at the top. And I think we also need Foundation. So this is our Supabase client setup. One thing I do like about Firebase is that we don't have to do this. We get access to like a shared singleton. But as we all know, singletons aren't the best thing in the world. They do have a time and place, but we do have to do, there is more like boilerplate code when setting up services with Supabase. Because we have to initialize this client with these components in order to use it throughout the rest of this file. So we're going to make a function to fetch our current user, async, and it's going to be async throws, and this is going to return our actual user object. So we can see here that this is different from our auth API, right? We're separating these concerns. So basically, guys, I'm going to say let user equal try-await client.auth.session.user. And once again, this is also different from Firebase. If you're coming from there, we had a singleton with the auth component, right? But now this is all sort of mapped through this client here. We don't do like auth.auth.current-user.whatever as we do in Firebase. And we also have to use try-await. So this is using Swift concurrency APIs here. So then we're simply going to say we want to return try-await client.from, and we have our table name here, which is users. We're going to say .select, and we're going to say .eq. So match only rows where the column is equal to a value. So this is how we get our currently logged in user. We need to say column ID is equal to the value of the user's ID, right? So slightly different functionality here with a Postgres database. And then we're going to say .single, because we only want one object coming back, .execute, and then we're going to say .value. So this feature is really, really cool. It essentially just automatically decodes our object into the expected return type. So let's see, why is it yelling at me? Oh, I don't think we used the column there. I think it's just ID. Cool. And I think we actually need to say .uuid string here, because this is like an actual UUID object. We need to get the string associated with that. But yeah, guys, so back to what I was saying, this .value just automatically decodes it into our expected return type. So with Firebase, we had to manually do that decoding or write custom extensions in order for that to happen. But this is literally all we got to do. So this is really, really cool. But we do see the differences with how we get to our user object. With Firestore, there was a little bit like more clear of like a pathway to it because of the way the database is structured. But here we actually have to do like sort of a query where we have to say, hey, I need you to go find me the user where these two fields are equal to each other. The field ID is equal to this guy here, and get one of them, execute it, and give me the value back. So next up comes our injection into our user manager. So here we're going to make an observable @main_actor class called user manager. And here is where we're going to store the current user of our application, guys. Or like we want to have access to the current user and all of the properties associated with it. So that is going to be the job of this user manager. So I hope the separation of concerns between our auth manager and our user manager is clear here. This is how I structure even my Pro Plus level applications, guys. So you're getting a lot of inside secrets here for free, which is what we do here at AppStuff. So now we just need to implement this, what's it called? Via dependency injection. So we're going to say we want private let service, which is our user service. And then we're going to say init service. And we're going to just give it a default value so we don't have to inject it every time. And we're just going to say self.service equals service. And then here we're going to say func fetch current user async, and we're going to say do self.current user equals try await service dot fetch current user catch. And we'll just say print debug failed to fetch current user with error. So in these tutorials, guys, I am breaking down how I do things in real world production applications from an architecture perspective. I could have just shoved all this stuff in the auth manager, but that's not what I like to do. I like to give you guys the highest quality content that you can possibly find for free. And if you guys like this structure of code, make sure you check out my pro courses on the website at appstuff.io. The link for this is in the description. We have all kinds of pro courses, including things on interview prep, fundamentals, Pro Plus level courses that teach you how to build apps at a production level, and app clones as well with things like Airbnb, Instagram, Threads, Tinder, Uber, and much more, guys. So a lot of high quality content on the website. And also make sure you check us out on Discord. The invite link is in the description here. We have a growing community of iOS developers that are part of AppStuff here. I just created this Discord and it's been awesome so far. So make sure you guys check that out as well, in addition to our pro courses. And if you guys want to become a member here with us, you get access to all the pro courses for a low monthly cost. This is less than a coffee a day. And our students that are part of the membership are absolutely killing it, and they're getting access to thousands and thousands of dollars worth of material for just a low monthly cost, and you can cancel literally anytime. So make sure you guys check that stuff out. But anyway, let's go back to the code. So now that we have this guy implemented, let's go ahead and figure out where we need to set this up and where we need to call this function so that we can ultimately, guys, display this information in our profile header. So almost done. So in our app folder, we're going to set up our user manager. So I'm going to say @state private var user manager is equal to our user manager. And we're going to set that up the same way we did our auth manager. User manager. Cool. So now we are going to access this through the environment on our profile screen. And we are going to then display the current user's username there. So let's go ahead and go back to our user profile. Let's see, user profile. I just love a clean folder structure because it makes everything so easy to find. User manager dot self. Oops. Private var user manager. And here, guys, we are going to simply say that we want the current user's username. So I'm going to say if let current user is equal to my user manager dot current user, then I'm going to display the username. Current user dot username. So awesome. Now we just need to make sure we actually call the function of fetching that current user so it actually performs that action. So where do we want to do that? I think we can simply do it here on, let's just do it on the navigation stack. We can say .task await user manager .fetch current user. Perfect. And this should wrap it up for our video, guys. Let's just go ahead and test it out. Let's also give this a navigation title really quickly. We'll say .navigation title, and we will say profile. And we could maybe add the email for the user as well. And in another video, we'll get into all the fancy profile image stuff, which is going to be so much fun. And the best part is going to be building out that user feed, man. This app is really, really awesome. I'm so excited to bring you guys this. We are partnered with Supabase in doing this. So Supabase is sponsoring this video. But check that out, man. We can see that we are getting our user's username back. So we have successfully fetched our user from the database. We've decoded it into this user object. And now we can use it through this user manager that's on the environment. So we can use this anywhere in our application, which is so, so cool. So anyway, guys, let's also maybe just make this a VStack. Let's see. Let's go ahead and say we want this to be a VStack. And we'll say that we want the text for the current user.email as well. And really quickly, there is a little bit of a UI hiccup here, right? So let's go ahead and just re-look at this one more time. So you guys will notice that it like takes a second for that to load, and that it like kind of makes the UI feel a little bit janky, right? So instead of wrapping this all up in an if-let, let's just go ahead and do some nil coalescing here. So we need to make this optional, and we give that a blank string value as well. And we're going to take these two text components and just remove that if-let block. And we could even give this like a default value. We could maybe say like loading. And now this is going to show up no matter what, because it takes time for our user manager to fetch that current user. Ooh, sorry, we need to say user manager dot current user. And user manager dot current user. And while it's taking that time to load, we want to make sure that our UI doesn't get all janky, right? Okay, so that looks a little bit better. And we can just make the VStack alignment here dot leading, and maybe give it some spacing of like, I don't know, 6 pixels. And let's give the email a foreground style of dot secondary. And run that one more time. And keep an eye on that UI. So let's see here. Yep. So that definitely looks a little better. What we have in the completed application, guys, let me go ahead and log in really quickly. We have like more advanced loading state and stuff, and that's available in the completed source code. So basically, if I log in, we actually use loading indicators to help us do that. Right? But we're not going to be doing that here, but those features are available in the source code. Definitely incentivizes you guys to buy that. And once again, that is available on the website, or the link for that is in the description. And for a one-time purchase, you guys can get lifetime access to all of our YouTube projects here. So this one is going up right after I, get this all launched. And this is an insane level of value here for just $59. And once again, the more I add to this source code vault, the more this price will increase. So make sure you guys get in now while it's still just $59, because that's an insane amount of value there. But anyway, guys, that's going to wrap it up for this video. Just to do a quick recap, we got a lot done here. In the next video, we're going to go over how to upload profile images and stuff, which is going to be a lot of fun. But we set up our user table here. We added policies to our user table. As we can see here, we have insert, select, and update policies set up. And we modified our UI to include things like adding a username and all of that stuff. And this is ultimately just looking absolutely incredible so far. So I hope you guys are enjoying this. Once again, shout out to Supabase for sponsoring this video. Super excited to be partnered with them, and super excited to bring you guys the rest of the videos in this series to build out this awesome application that we see here. But we'll see you in the next one, guys. Thanks for watching. This is Stefan saying peace out.